For time beyond memory, people have experienced at first hand physical, visual and auditory events which could not be explained, and so it was feared. Today, we call this the paranormal. Our podcast will delve into this world of the unknown. So sit back and join Tina, Jake, Chris, Bridget and Bill and journey into the darkness with us. Welcome to Paranormal Researchers Ireland podcast.
Hi guys, welcome to episode 8 of Paranormal Researchers Ireland podcast. And this evening there's myself, Tina, Jake, Chris, and this week there's Bridget. So we're going to hop over to Chris. He's going to give you a little bit of information about what tonight's podcast is about.
How you doing, guys? Great to be back with you again there for episode 8. So tonight, guys, what we're going to do, we're going to cover some witchcraft and witches, well, associated witches or people that are meant to be witches in Ireland and a little bit across Europe as well. So we have our good pal Bridget here with us tonight, and she's going to give us a little bit of information, and of course we'll just do all the quizzing then after that. Is that okay with you, Bridget?
Yeah, that's perfect, thanks.
Brilliant.
No pressure, no, Bridget, no pressure.
No pressure, no pressure. So over to you, Bridget, when you're ready.
Bridget is our expert.
Well, I wouldn't put it that far. But the first thing I want to ask is, what do you think about when, if I ask you, what do you think about witchcraft or witches? What comes to your mind?
Go on, Chris, you first.
Hocus Pocus. No.
That's what I was going to say.
Was it? Yeah. Hocus Pocus?
My favourite movie is The Witch.
That's a great movie.
And then I
Roald
love
Dahl.
The Witches. No, not Roald Dahl. The Witch, the newer one.
Oh,
the horror.
yeah.
That's
And then
great.
The Witches.
Yeah.
And Roald Dahl.
That's Roald Dahl.
And then Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
And then Hocus Pocus 2.
Our tree's coming out soon. No, which I suppose you'd have to go with the. It's the first thing I think that jumps into everyone's head is the Wicked Witch of the. Was it the West or the East?
West, yeah.
West in The Wizard of Oz, you know, with the black cape and the black hat.
Go
And
away, Chris.
I'm telling you, would you not agree? With big wart on their nose and all that kind of stuff. But I know it's a stereotype. I know Bridget's going to be telling us a lot more what it is and what it isn't. But that's the kind of thing that jump nearly straight away into a lot of people's heads, I think.
I know. Bridget, why have you got an interest in witches?
I think it all started, when I got into a type of energy healing, and from there then I was just looking and reading about stuff, so it was mostly energy healing, and then I've interest in psychic and medium, and all of them are associated with witchcraft, or people who are sensitive, or people who are working with nature
Interesting.
all the time, and that's basically where I started, and I just read a lot about it now. So
Yeah.
You've got so much information there in front of you. Like
yeah,
you've loads.
don't worry, we won't go through it all tonight.
This could be episode 1 of 15.
Do you think in Ireland people are interested in witches in Ireland? Do you think it's a big thing in Ireland?
I think it was lost for a long time because different types of religion took over. But
Yeah.
I think there was always an under kind of ground celebration of paganism and druidism in Ireland. That's really where it would have started, and now it's coming back around where people are more interested in natural treatments and natural like herbal remedies, and they go
Crystals.
yeah.
all that.
Chris, you thought she said Chris, didn't you?
No, crystals.
Yeah, I thought you were blaming Chris for the herbal remedies.
Please no.
That's whiskey.
I wouldn't do a thing like that. But no, it's a very interesting topic, and I'm sure you'd probably agree. I'd assume it's a big area, like it's a very in-depth area, very big. Like it's not just the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot more involved with it than people think.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is when I was researching about witchcraft in Ireland is a lot of our documentation was destroyed.
All right.
Yeah, because all of our research and everything before was like from 1300s, 1600s, and then generally everything after that was destroyed because of unfortunately, the reformation of Ireland.
Really? I didn't know that.
So a lot of our documentation was destroyed. So there's no actual written documentation of the witch trials between a certain period of time in Ireland.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, another thing actually that I learned just from reading for the podcast was that actual witchcraft was illegal in Ireland between 1586 and 1821, which I thought was really weird, because when you look at people now, you've all sorts of people, and what you follow is never really illegal. And witchcraft is kind of considered a religion or something that is ritual and
A belief.
Yeah, a belief. So and then it was taken away after 1821. It was repealed, and it was repealed because the church took over in Ireland and was Protestant and Catholic church, obviously here in Ireland. But there was conflict between them, so the witchcraft was almost forgotten about.
Okay.
And the church then decided to ignore that there was ever witches or witchcraft in Ireland, and therefore then they just took it away, because they were like, there's no need for it to be illegal if it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, yeah.
I didn't know any of that.
Like,
That's really interesting.
I think I speak for the other two individuals. I'm sorry, guys. It's could be witchcraft. No, I know very little about witchcraft. Like, I probably know 10% of what's out there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to say the witches of Ireland, because that's going to be Bridget, but I know of some witches that were meant to be in Ireland. They were classed as witches, but by no means I'm going to say that I know a lot about it. I only know the bits and pieces. Would you agree with that, Tina? Would you know
100%.
a lot?
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Definitely not. I only would know what Bridget would say.
Yeah.
Different pieces. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And even some of the witches that Bridget's going to speak about tonight,
Yeah.
I didn't even know some of them.
A question, or not a question, a thing. I'd say, Bridget, would you find that a lot of people would nearly associate witchcraft to be evil straight away? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there was a lot in that, and mostly that came from the Protestant church in Ireland when they came over from Europe, and the UK obviously as well. But it was mostly the UK and Scotland that brought witchcraft here, and it came with the Protestant settlement. So and then Catholicism jumped in on top of that then as well, and
Of course.
they all just decided to say that it was witches were satanic followers, and that any of the rituals or anything that they performed was all because it was from the devil, and he was the guide. But that's actually completely false. Like, I'm sure there are witchcraft out there that is satanic, but anything that I've read about was mostly wise women. In Ireland, it was mostly people who had learned herbalism because their families were poor and they had to live off the ground, and they had to treat themselves medically with the earth, basically anything that was growing around their houses and things like that. So they had to treat themselves basically because they couldn't afford to go to a doctor, and they were also in rural areas in Ireland. And
they were known as healers.
So they were the healers, but they were also called cunning. So sometimes in Ireland, the traditions in Ireland were mostly, they were called milk and butter witches. So say that it was a tradition that if your cow, say, would stop producing milk, it was because a witch put a curse on your cow, and then they had to go to a cunning woman to try and heal and break the witch. But the main thing in Ireland that I've read about is it's not satanic, but it's mostly with the fae. So, for example, Biddy Early was supposedly half kind of fae. She was supposed to have some sort of connection with fairies and the fairy world and the other world.
So anybody who is listening here to this evening, who is Biddy Early?
Biddy Early was a woman from County Clare. She was a wise woman, and she...
That's all good.
She has a lot of notes, guys.
Prepared well. She prepared
She
well.
prepared very well.
So she was born in an area in County Clare called Faha, and she was born in 1798. And for anyone who's Irish, you know that was a really important year in Ireland. But she was born to parents were John Thomas Connors and Ellen Early. And apparently Ellen was very into herbalism as well, and she would make up the different remedies and different treatments for all of her local area, and people would travel to her as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Biddy learned all of her skills from her herbal skills and that
from her mother.
treatments from her mother. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. And so obviously she would have been known in the area, like her mother. Probably the wrong thing to say, but it was like nearly, what's the word I'm looking for? Like nearly a natural doctor. Would that be the right word to say?
Yeah, I guess it was mostly back then. You see, women were allowed to associate with other women, so they used to hang in other people's houses, and all their traditions were brought together to one place, and then they all took them back with them.
All right.
So it was like they learned like different types of skills, like even the sewing and stuff like that. They all learned that in the one place, and women were allowed to share their skills with other women in that time. And then when Ireland was changing, that was all taken away from them as well, and women had to stay at home, so they had to learn different traditions themselves from whatever was around them.
Just actually while you're talking there, Bridget, and I can guarantee you, if someone at this table hasn't heard of this, someone listening definitely has. Just something that jumped to mind about natural kind of remedies.
Yeah.
Remember when you got stung by an nettle when you were younger? What did you rub on it?
Dock leaf.
Dock leaf?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just when you think of stuff like that, isn't actually, you know, that just literally jumped into my head there. And I did hear another, my nan said this one before, a snail. If you rub a snail on a wart and stick it on a thistle,
the
wart will die.
Yeah, all
so it's just
of them
little
would have
things
been
like that.
like what we now call old wives' tales.
Yeah.
But they all would have been actual genuine,
Used.
genuine like medical care for people back in the 1800s.
So at some stage then, Biddy Early, she got labelled a witch. And was it something particular that happened, or was it a name she took upon herself? Like,
so the first time what happened was Biddy Early. The word of Biddy Early got around, and people were being cured of whatever ailments they had. And like I said earlier, it was always people who couldn't afford proper medical care would look for these type of women, and then they'd send them off, and they generally would cure whatever was wrong with them. So because the cure, everyone was curious as to how Biddy Early learned about the herbalism and that, but if anyone knows Biddy Early, they always associate her with a blue bottle.
yes.
And apparently the blue bottle was gifted from the other world, and it gave Biddy Early the power to treat and heal, and also to curse and like to remove curses if that was the situation that somebody was in.
Oh. And even her house now, so we've all been to Biddy Early's, which is, the house is still on land, totally derelict, but when you walk into the house, there's walking sticks, there's blue bottles, there's ribbons, it's still used as a healing.
So Bridget, it's just when you said that there, like Jake, you haven't been to Biddy Early's house, have you?
No, I haven't.
And I know you definitely have, and you've been to it, Bridget?
Yeah, I have.
And again, just from someone that has a massive interest in witchcraft, and I suppose especially Biddy Early, how did it feel? What was it like?
It was incredible. I actually couldn't even believe that we were there because like I didn't know where it was located or anything like that. And I remember when we went, Tina didn't say where we were going, and then we ended up in Clare, and then she was like, we're going to Biddy Early's house, and I was like a 5-year-old child at a birthday party, so I was really delighted to be there. And it just, even walking in, it's completely surrounded by woods. If you were driving past, you would not see it was there. You'd kind of have to know where the location is. And then we went in, and it was just incredible. Like there's
very
lots of souvenirs there. Like people are they're exchanging like blue bottles as well themselves. And
There actually was a few blue bottles there,
and there was just loads of gifts. So it just goes to show that there's so many people who have belief in her healing ability, even now as a spirit or as just an energy now that she's passed away. So
like a thing I noticed about the place, there seemed to be a location where there's a lot of respect for the location. Like there was a lot of, I suppose, memorabilia there, like like Tina was saying about like the walking sticks and ribbons tied onto the little branches and all stuff like that, which was actually, to be honest, pretty cool to see, to be honest. There's no graffiti, no vandalism. It's like, for anyone that hasn't been there, guys, it's literally a shell of a building, but you could tell by going up there, there's a lot of respect for the location. Like there's no kind of bad intent. Would that make sense to you? Yeah, you'd agree with that?
Yeah.
not changing the subject off Biddy a whole lot, but I know we said at the start, but listen, it's all good veering off to different. We're ever going to talk a little bit about Europe. Witchcraft, I suppose, would it have started in Europe, Bridget? Would you agree?
Yeah, it would have started in...
She's just checking her notes again.
Sorry.
So we'll just put on elevator music. But so witchcraft, as you were saying earlier before we came on, Bridget, it started in Europe, and Ireland was kind of nearly the last location, was it?
It was, because Ireland, which we are so grateful for, is at the edge of our continent.
Yeah.
So we are left kind of to our own devices a lot of the time.
Still to this day, actually.
Yeah. So it only came to Ireland as England and Scotland started to move here.
Okay.
So before that, we had folklore, and we had our own traditions, and we followed Druidism, and we followed like paganism. And they were our main sources of traditions in Ireland, which now are still there, but we find it really difficult to figure out which ones were which. But a lot of our folklore comes from that time. So it's kind of Christian.
It's just interesting you say that about the paganism and all. It is still there. Like, I read a book like years ago on Freemasons. Remember that? And they said and I'm not veering off the topic, but they say the crucifix with Jesus on the crucifix, and it's like there's sun rays coming out of the top of his head. It's like a pagan symbol for the sun and stuff like that. Not going into that topic, it could be a whole episode, but that's why I'm just trying to capitalise on what you're saying. It is still there.
Yeah.
So you actually, before we came on air as well, you've mentioned Biddy. What other witches?
I was just going to say, let's say me living in, I only know Biddy Early and Alice Kittler.
Alice Kittler, yeah.
They would be the two that I know, but then Bridget threw a spanner in.
She's after bombarding us with two other individuals.
Yeah, really interesting. So Biddy would be first, is it?
No, Biddy would be from the 1798, so she was born in the 1700s. But before that, we had Alice Kittler.
She was the first, was she?
So she was from the 1300s.
She's gone back that far.
Yeah, so she was actually really far back, which is amazing that the story actually carried to now, and that Kilkenny actually carry her name really, really proudly.
Absolutely.
Because they have a bar and a restaurant down there named after her.
Is that her house?
I think that's where she's supposed to be from, because she's definitely from Kilkenny City. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've been saying it all along. Used to have been there. Tina and Bridget have actually been there. Myself and Jake haven't. I definitely at some stage want to go there and just have a pint.
Oh yeah.
And the reason for it is just to experience.
You'd have to walk around, because let's say I was there once.
Yeah.
And I walked around. I went into the toilets and things like that. But then the second time I was there, I seen it was nearly like the walls are so thick, and it's like really old. So there's different parts, isn't there, Bridget? Like it's.
I'd love to just experience. I'd love to just experience.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's like history.
That's Kittler's in.
Yeah.
Must actually check it out. Jake, we might organise a
session.
A trip.
Shindig.
Shindig in Kittler's. If there's any Kilkenny listeners listening and you want to buy you want to buy us a pint, feel free to message the PRI page. Anyway, sorry, Bridget. So Alice Kittler.
The story of Alice Kittler.
Yeah. So this is it's an unusual one, I think, because so first of all, she was born in 1280, which is quite a long time ago, and it turns out that she had 6 husbands.
Yeah, it was 6 or 7, wasn't it?
Yeah, and 5 of them died.
Okay.
So,
it's the death.
What are you laughing at? I like the way Tina always kind of laughs at. You always laugh at tragedy, Tina. What's the story there?
I know.
Just something I want to highlight. Anyway, sorry, Bridget, again.
So Alice was actually, her family were actually Flemish, so they weren't actually traditionally Irish. So they moved here, and they were wealthy merchants as well. But as Alice grew up, so she had a really good business mind herself, and then she always married into money as well. So she always had an idea of what she wanted in her life. But so she kind of married one husband after the next.
Girl Alice.
Yeah. after they all suspiciously died.
No apparent cause.
Yeah, and the thing that really shocks me is that nobody questioned her. Like, it was like as if they thought that a woman couldn't think of murdering her husband if she
honest,
wanted.
by number 3, I wouldn't have questioned her either. No problem, go ahead there. There's nothing to wonder. There's nothing to worry about here. Sorry, Bridget. Sorry. I shouldn't be. Go ahead, Bridget. Sorry, this is the third time I've interrupted you.
So at one point, one of her husbands had a son, and then suddenly the son started to show signs of illness as well. And it turns out that he was being poisoned by arsenic.
Really?
Yeah, so it wasn't just the husbands that she was targeting, because she was kind of just wanting everything for herself.
Yeah.
So that son wasn't hers, it
It was her stepson. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. I get you. Sorry.
Wow.
I thought you said it was her son.
No, she actually had her own son, but she never harmed him, like, thankfully.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
the thing that I really was curious about Alice was that if Alice was currently living, if she was currently living like now,
Yeah.
I think she would be known as a serial killer. I genuinely think so, because, like, obviously there wasn't great autopsies or anything back then, but like 6 husbands and 5 of them died. You know,
And arsenic found in
and
her
arsenic
system.
found in the stepson.
Yeah,
What was
no,
the-
it's funny because
What was the steps like in Alice Kittler's? Like, were the bad? You have been there, were the steep stairs or something?
there is quite steep.
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah.
There is.
So she was the first one, Bridget, like apparently first. And is there anything to indicate? Obviously, we're talking about the deaths, the husband stuff, but is there anything to indicate witchcraft, like so to speak, or is there anything?
When did they pinpoint the witchcraft?
That's what I mean, yeah.
When did she?
Or did you come across anything like that that kind of highlighted it, so to speak?
Well, there was one point, obviously, where they accused her of being a witch.
Yeah, so she had, when they actually decided to accuse her of being a witch, she had 7 charges brought against her. And it was like denying Christ and the church,
Okay.
putting up living animals and spreading them across the roads.
Jeez.
And like in an act of sacrifice for demons or the devil.
These were charges against her.
Yeah, these were,
Wow.
stealing the church keys and performing rituals inside the church at night. Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was a lot of things against religion that she was highlighting. So I'm sure because this stuff was happening, they decided that this is a form of witchcraft. So
Okay. You have to remind me of something. Remember, again, this isn't veering off topic. Remember the Abbey of the Black Hag?
Yes.
Again, guys, this is totally off the top of my head. I haven't even remembered any of this, but remember we went there and wasn't that meant to be a convent? And the head, what was her name? What would you call the head of the convent? Anyway, the head nun, my apologies if that's completely wrong, guys, was meant to be doing black magic or something in the convent. And like, wasn't there a letter, I think, sent from the bishop or whoever it was to close it down? But that's just something you've reminded me of there with the church keys. That was a woman that's in Limerick.
yeah,
Wasn't it Limerick?
Skeeton.
Yeah, and you've obviously heard of that, have you?
Yeah.
But no, it's just interesting when you said that. It's just something that popped into my head. But anyway, sorry, Bridget, 4th time interrupting you.
And the other charges were like poisoning her husband, so her latest husband, so that was her last husband. So obviously then they were kind of catching on to her after the 5th one. So
The guys finally woke up. Oh, geez, there's something going on here.
yeah, I think the problem with Alice was that she was in a place of power.
Yeah.
So she was kind of untouchable.
She had money.
Yeah,
and
so
power.
she had money,
Yeah.
and she also was very intelligent. So she was able to like make up stories and make up things that people would end up believing.
Yeah.
But that's not even the worst part, I think, about Alice. I think the worst part was that she got off all of her charges because she knew her brother-in-law was involved in the prosecution.
No way.
Yeah, so she ended up leaving Ireland and she was never seen again. And apparently she moved to the UK. But it was actually her maid servant that actually ended up taking the brunt of all of her charges and was accused of witchcraft. And she was actually the first person in Ireland to be burned at the stake. for
Where was she
witchcraft.
birthed? Was it in Kilkenny
It was in
City?
Kilkenny, yeah.
I find her story, Alice Kittler's,
Yeah, it's
absolutely so interesting.
there's just so much to it, isn't there?
So the maid took the brunt because Alice absconded.
She left her and left, she kind of planted the idea into the people's heads that it was actually her maidservant. Her name is Petronila de Media, and I hope I got that right. I'm so sorry if I didn't. I just don't want to miss her name because it was unfortunate that she got stuck in it.
Of course, absolutely.
But at the time, she was denying all the charges, but at the time they used torture means, and she got tortured so much that she eventually said that she was part of all of the rituals and followed Satan, and so then she ended up getting burnt at the stake, unfortunately.
So,
Is there anywhere in Kilkenny that kind of even recognises that? I wonder. That you know of?
if I looked more into it, maybe. Kilkenny is known as one of the most haunted cities in Ireland.
It's so old, I suppose. Yeah.
If I looked more into it, it's something I haven't looked a huge deal into it. But I'll tell you something now. After hearing Bridget, I'd be well into looking into all this.
Yeah, I think the sad part for me was that Alice is so well known, and she has a name on a bar down there, and then only a few people would have heard of Petronila.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
When you think about it, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't want to go for a pint down there. Yeah. Actually, I hope they still don't use the same kind of concoction she was using.
Hopefully not.
And who would be the third witch, Bridget? Because this one is, Bridget's looking there just for the dates that
these two I
bullet points.
hadn't heard of.
So this next one, I haven't heard of her either, haven't we now?
No, the minute you said the name, I was like, who? I hadn't a clue who it was. But,
so is this the third or the fourth witch?
We've talked about Alice, Biddy, and this will be the third.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this one is called Florence Newton, and
Never heard. Where's she from?
Youghal in County Cork.
County Cork?
Yeah. And so it was in 1661. But unfortunately, from a lot of things that I'm reading, generally people who were poor or kind of on the streets, I know I'm going to use this phrase, but I don't believe it, but it's like a nuisance to society.
Yes.
A lot of them got roped in and thrown into prison and stuff, saying that they were using witchcraft just because they were a nuisance. A lot of that was in the reading. Now, there's no, after a certain time, after the 1600s, there wasn't a whole lot of evidence left. So that was just, at that time, that seems to be a really...
So was she just homeless?
She was just somebody who ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was looking for bread at a farmhouse, and she just got accused of witchcraft then after that. Yeah,
that's mad.
You always see a stereotype online, and it's like back in the 1500s, if a woman done anything out of what they were supposed to do, she's a witch, which is crazy.
Yeah,
you know.
The story with Florence is that when she called it a home to look for bread because she was hungry, the maid answered the door, and later on in the evening, so she said no, she didn't give Florence any bread, and she told her to go away. And apparently when the maid went down to the stream to get some water, Florence was there, and she was apparently put a curse on the maid, and then the maid became immediately ill. When she got back to the house, she became immediately ill, and told the owner of the house that it was Florence, and then the witch hunt kind of began.
Yeah, it's mad. Again, what you were saying there, it's literally just something popped into my head there as well. I think I'm remembering this right, but remember when the Black Plague was going through Europe?
Yeah.
Again, my apologies if I'm getting this wrong, but I think the whole she's a witch kind of scenario, what was the Black Plague carried on mostly? Rats.
Yeah.
And what would kill a rat mostly? Cats. And
they started slaughtering cats in the streets because they associated them with Satanism and witchcraft.
So therefore, a woman had a cat or cats, as pets. She's not getting the plague. Oh, she's doing witchcraft. Do you get what I mean? I think I'm remembering that right. That was like
rats,
an association.
There were so many more rats because they started killing cats.
Yeah.
I never even heard of that.
No.
In Ireland.
Well, they're all around Europe.
Like the whole of Europe, It would have been a thing like...
they associated cats with Satanism and witchcraft.
They slaughtered the cats.
Literally, if there was a cat in the street, they'd be killing them, like...
Yeah, so
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah, and then the rats just took over and started the plague,
Isn't it amazing, though, what people get... Well, I won't say scared. Well, actually, no, it's right. What people get scared of, such a natural thing there, isn't it? Am I right?
And it causes mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria is huge, without
it just causes mass hysteria. It's just crazy.
But I'm 99% sure I heard that recently. It could be one of my friends that told me. Anyway, sorry, Bridget, again.
It's true. Yeah, you did right.
Just going on that as well, that just made me think of something else. So in Ireland, witchcraft wasn't like massively... It wasn't a huge thing.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at Europe, the witch trials were massive. Like hundreds of thousands of women were being killed. And then sometimes maybe hundreds of men. Because they were just by association generally. But then in Ireland, like so far I've only mentioned one has been burnt at the stake. And unfortunately hers was a story of association as well.
Yeah.
But at the time when witchcraft was spreading across Europe, Ireland had its own problems. So we had famine, we had plague, and we had like people just dying on the streets, and so other things were taken over. So there was no space for witchcraft to develop. And then, like I said already, until it was being taken over, another organisation or another like society took it in to Ireland, and it just never took off the way it did in Europe. Because there just was never any space for it.
There was a lot going on.
There was always so much going on. Yeah,
it's like what you're saying as well. We're at the very edge of the continent as well. We're a little island, which that could have played a factor as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. Would it be right in saying, I think I've seen somewhere before as well, in Scotland, I think there was more people burnt at the stake in Scotland than there was in the Salem witch trials.
Yeah, like there was a number that I read, and this could be wrong, but I think between England and Scotland there was like 500,000 or 300,000 people.
That's when you think about it.
Like it's crazy.
That's a crazy figure.
But I'd say the book that was written.
Oh, the Manus Maleficarum.
Yeah, that caused a lot of problems in Europe.
Yeah, I actually have a copy of that.
Do you?
Yeah.
Apparently he only wrote that because he was heartbroken or burned by some other woman, and then he just wrote this crazy book with all his mad ideas of how to hunt witches.
Yeah. It was wrote in the 1400s.
Actually,
it's otherwise known as the Hammer of the Witches, or the Hammer of Witches.
That's what it is in translation. Yeah.
Yeah, the Malus. I think it was it wrote by one individual or two individuals? I think it could have been a priest involved with it, so I could be completely wrong. I haven't actually read it yet, but it's definitely on my to-read list. I got a copy of it, I think it's about 2 years ago, probably longer actually.
1486 is when it was originally published.
And there's a Sajak, is it one or two?
One.
That's one.
Heinrich
Kramer.
Oh, sorry, there you go. That's the one, yeah. And you were saying he was just kind of disgruntled by...
That's men.
Apparently, yeah.
Not even surprised.
that's men. Now,
I wish it was the 1400s, you'd be done.
But now, I haven't read it, but I believe one of the telltale signs in it. Now, if I'm wrong, I hold my hands up, but I believe one of the telltale signs in it is that they tie the woman up, bind her arms and legs, and they throw her into a river. If she floats, she's a witch. And if she dies, she's like, we shouldn't be laughing because, like, either way, the woman's dead. Do you know what I mean? And is that actually? I'm nearly sure that's one of the telltale signs in it. Again, I haven't read it, but that's meant to be one of them.
There are 3 sections in the book, and the first one is where it claims that witchcraft is real.
Yeah.
And that those who are practicing or are known of guilty of hearsay are condemned.
Yeah.
And men who associate with women who practice witchcraft are also going to be hunted
All right.
The second part is the evil of witchcraft. So this is where a lot of the negative stereotypes came in. It was this lad's book, like randomly making up stuff. There's no evidence of any of this. And it was like outlining like the specific ways where witches can harm those around them.
Yeah.
And here it would be like the butter witches, which would only harm, well, apparently cure or harm like dairy cows. Like that's quite a lot different than somebody saying that they're going to harm a whole family of people. That just
completely
because
different.
Yeah, it's completely different. So he really caused a lot of hysteria basically by misinformation.
This book, maybe that's from this book was used by the church, wasn't it?
There was a Dominican,
by witch hunters, I should say.
There was a Dominican friar involved, but I just can't remember what his association was. I just remember he was involved because Kramer's ideology came from the Bible.
That's yeah.
And it was like
what's wrong?
Yeah.
PRI would like to distance ourselves. I'm only messing. I just love getting Jake every so often. Sorry, Bridget.
Apparently the verse is Exodus 22:18. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. So like,
it's actually in the Bible.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, that's what is. The quote was from anyway.
I thought you read the Bible, Chris.
Yeah, I just forgot that part.
Here's another random fact about that book. So for 2 centuries, that book sold more copies than the Bible.
I think I did hear that before.
Good. No, I'm only joking.
That was Jake Barco.
I'm only joking.
So Jake, you're in favour of a book that was
yes.
That was women.
No, I'm only joking.
I'm only messing. No, genuinely to get that across, we're messing. But that sold more copies in 2 centuries than the Bible.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely, just to let you know, I'm here listening to all this. I never heard any of that. I didn't hear the book. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
How, I still go back to the fact of how the fuck can a woman get away with, not get away, how can a woman survive being tied up and fucked into a river? And if you float, we're going to kill you anyway. But if you drown, you're dead.
But that's the rationale, like that's what you were dealing with back then. That's the problem, isn't it?
Again, sorry for the language, but Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? Yeah. Now again, I must actually read it now to see what other kind of nonsense, or what other kind of stuff is in it, because that's crazy.
So that would have been in the third part of the book. Yeah. That was the recommended methods of prosecuting witches. So including how to identify them, interrogate them, and then execute them.
Instructions.
And
it was ridiculous.
And it's a fairly big book. Like it's a big enough. Like it's. I don't know why I'm sure, because people can't see how thick I'm showing with my fingers.
It's that big.
It's about this thick, guys. But no, it's fair. There's a lot of information, a lot of writing in this book. But I can't get over the Bible thing.
Yeah.
Make you wonder.
But following that book, it drove Europe mental in relation to if somebody had a falling out with their neighbour, they accused them of witchcraft. And they had to go through trials, and most likely they were probably put to death.
I would be dead if I lived back in that time, wouldn't I, Jake?
Mm-hmm. Well, we all would be, because we're associated with you.
Yeah, now, Jake.
So, Bridget, the last woman has a very unique surname, which, if I can remember correctly before we went live, what was her name again?
So her name is Biddy Brazil.
Yeah.
Never heard of the woman.
There's a lot of people in Ireland with the second name Brazil.
Brazil in Offaly, mostly in the Midlands.
I never heard of the surname.
No offence, I've genuinely never heard. I thought it was just a country.
No, I know a few people.
Yeah. So I found her just from the research for the podcast. This is from archives. So these stories are mostly are from national school stories. So this is mostly folklore, but there's no record of Biddy Brazil's birth. But there is a Bridget Brazil who was born around that time, so everyone knows that Biddy is kind of a short name for Bridget. So that
should actually start calling you Biddy.
No, I was called that for a long time.
There we go. How come we haven't linked this together?
In
Biddy Kenny.
just got to move on now. So that was in
Junior.
1784. And apparently she lived in a wood in Castletown, which is a place in County Offaly.
It was very close to when Biddy Early was born.
Yeah, so that's why it's a bit... We're just wondering whether people had just carried Biddy Early stories into the Midlands or if this woman actually existed. But there is a person of the name in the Midlands born around 1784.
Interesting.
And I imagine all these stories that the National School had written were all passed down through generations. So,
interesting though.
Yeah,
very interesting.
So she was supposed to have a relationship with the fairies as well. So like Biddy Early, and that's just why it's a bit like I wonder, is it just very similar?
Yeah.
But she used to live near St. Bridget's well, and apparently that's where she got her healing water from. So she used to cure animals a lot from curses or hexes, and there's lots of stories here, but I can post them on the page instead of reading them out, because there's a good few of them, and actually they're really nice because you just know that those people believed those stories, and it's just carried down through the generations. So, but it's just good to mention her name as well, because she played a big part in Ireland.
And like some of them, like I know Alice Kittler wasn't, but if I remember correctly, three of those women were born after that book was printed.
Yeah.
I'd be right in saying. It'd make you wonder though, why do you think that book sold more than again, I'm not picking...
straight back to the book.
No, I genuinely, I'm not picking on the Bible, nor am I trying to, but I'm trying to... why do you think it sold more than the Bible? Do you think it's fear?
I take one.
The Vatican could have been charging too much. I'd be surprised.
I'm trying to ask a serious question.
Maybe your man had a better price.
But that's not kind of what I mean. It would make you wonder, like, was it a fear thing? Was it his...
No, absolutely not. I'd say it was a lot of, I don't know, curiosity maybe.
I'd say it was fear.
It was probably fear, curiosity.
Mass hysteria.
Yeah.
I'd say, like, word would have spread around the town fairly quick. If there was a local woman that was acting up, because they really didn't do much. All they done was
refer to the book. Refer to the book. Yeah, you know what I mean?
That's mad, isn't it?
And there is another thing as well, like witchcraft, we said it kind of at the start as well, is nearly associated with, like, nearly stereotypically is associated with evil and the devil and worshipping, you know, all this kind of stuff. And if you give me something, I'll get something, all that kind of scenario. Bridget, I'm assuming, well, actually, no, I'm not assuming because I know that there is, but there is, you've talked about it, the healing aspect, the knowledge aspect, all that kind of stuff. Is there any other examples of kind of good witchcraft? Like, would witchcraft be more associated with good rather than evil?
This kind of ties in. I was going to ask, not just you, but anyone, do you know about white witches?
Yeah.
Would that be good witches?
I think white witches are considered to be
good
Wicca, which would be generally a white kind of energy type following. I know there are white witches in the location here in Carlow, but I don't know them personally, so I'm actually not sure what their beliefs are.
So they're still practiced today?
We should have got one on.
Very good.
Yeah.
We could have got one on. Would have been interesting.
I think there's loads of white witches around.
Really?
Yeah.
The thing is, people who consider themselves as witch don't generally go around saying that they're witches, because it's a really personal practice. It's really about personal development and trying to use the good in the earth, the good in the air, all of the elements, and trying to use it to a benefit and in the most natural way.
That's interesting. Yeah, have you ever, if you know TikTok, the app, the video app, if you go onto TikTok and looked up witch, it'll just be loads of girls posting videos with their crystals and claiming to be witches and putting hexes on lads and like, what have you seen any of them?
I actually don't have TikTok, but I have been sent videos about the witches that are on
they're
it.
just like looking for attention, probably, are they?
I think
He's
if they
hex in the morning.
I think they believe what they're doing, but I mean, hexes only work if there's two people who believe the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So if you have your boyfriend over there or your ex-boyfriend and you want to hex him, and he has no idea that you are a witch or that witchcraft is in existence, probably won't have any impact on him.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
You know, because like, sure, if you don't believe, like, you don't believe.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I can't really comment on TikTok because I don't have it. But like I said, I have seen a few videos. But anything that I have seen, people who use crystals or people who use rune stones, or they're not doing any harm. Like,
absolutely.
So if that practice gives them peace of mind, if it gives them an identity that they feel comfortable and safe with, I don't think there's any problem with.
No, you'd see people slating them and all in the comments and
really?
the videos, and it's like it's not bothering you, so no, just leave them on. Like,
it's just it's a personal practice, really.
It's again, I think we can all agree it's an absolute massive area. And again, everyone kind of has the stereotype of like the old woman, hunched back, kind of dark, warts, long gangly fingers, and standing at a cauldron, I beg your pardon, with the big wooden spoon stirring the pot, like, you know what I mean?
Well, is that not real?
No, it is.
Good.
I think that's what. Remember when you asked earlier what jumps into your head? That's nearly...
That's what jumps into my head.
Because, like, even remember all cartoons?
Yeah.
Like, that's what was in it as well. Like.
Sure, it's the same we talked about on the other episodes. When you think of Ouija boards, what do you think of?
Yeah.
It's mainly movies. It's when you think of possessions. It's mainly what's it? Hollywood kind of influence,
absolutely.
Like, you know,
absolutely.
But no, it's a really, like, witchcraft is a really big thing.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of history to it. Like,
and I apologise if I have gotten any of the information wrong or anything today, because it's only from research that I'm trying to read through a lot of it and trying to figure out which ones is the best to talk about. Like,
exactly.
Listen.
There is one more that I think we should talk about, because it was apparently the last witch trial to ever happen in Ireland.
That's interesting.
And it was on the island of Ireland, so it was actually in County Antrim. And it's called the Island McGee Witch Trial.
I did hear this one.
Yeah.
I haven't.
I just find this one quite sad, to be honest with you, because it was in 1711, and there was a woman who died under mysterious circumstance, and her niece came to visit, or like came to her funeral, and apparently she was educated. I don't know why that was important, but maybe it was because she was able to manipulate people. So she came to support her family in the grief, and almost straight away, apparently she started to have episodes of like possession. Like, you know, it was like demonic possession, what you'd see in the movies, like vomiting. And actually she was vomiting foreign objects, so it wasn't just like, you know, it wasn't
last week.
And convulsions, and also a levitation as well. So actually she accused women in Antrim of making this happen to her through witchcraft. There was 8 women involved, and there was a mother and daughter, and then they were imprisoned, and they had to they had to do some really ridiculous stuff, and they were tortured, and they were trying to make them admit that they did something to this girl. So, hold on now, sorry, I'm just going through my notes really quickly. I don't want to get it wrong.
The woman that was possessed, just make sure I've got that right. Was that the woman that was meant to be the witch, or was that a different? She
was the niece of the woman who died under suspicious.
Sorry, yes.
She was the accuser.
She was the we talked about that as well. Remember the regurgitating and the levitation and all that kind of stuff as well. It goes to just interesting that it comes up in different areas. You know what I mean?
There was actually a man accused in that one as well.
Was there?
Yeah.
So how many in total were they killed?
There was 8 of them. There was 8 of them accused. And no, they weren't actually put to death. They were imprisoned though, under this girl's accusations. But during the trial, the girl had come in, and apparently when some of the women who were being accused came into the courtroom, she started to convulse and vomit and stuff, and then as soon as they left, it stopped. So, like, I don't know if it was just a really good performance or if she really had convinced herself that these women were doing this to her. But these women were charged and imprisoned, and then I think it was like in 2015, all of their charges were thrown away, and their names were kind of entered into society as not being witches, and they were cleared of their charges. And there's actually a monument up there for them to kind of show a mark of respect for what they went through and being falsely accused.
That is quite sad.
Yeah, it's very sad. Like, that happened to so many people. Like, you can be guaranteed that most of the people who had died or who were being accused of witchcraft were not witches at all.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Actually crazy. Well, I suppose, what more can we say? Like, this is a huge area. Like, we could be here till tomorrow morning and we still be only kind of the top of the iceberg kind of scenario.
If you want to read some of the stories, Bridget will be putting them up on
Facebook
or Instagram.
Yeah.
Paranormal Researchers Ireland, both of them, like.
Absolutely. But listen, Bridget, like, even if you could see it here, guys, there's a notepad here and there's about 45 pages of notes.
Really done our research.
She really did do her research.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge as well the amount of research Bridget has done.
It's a fair play to you for that.
And you've told me stories that I have never heard of, so I really appreciate that. And actually, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's
really interesting.
I think that's how I have so many notes, was because everything I found I wanted to kind of share or read or read more into and that. But
no, absolutely. But listen, I really appreciate it, Bridget. Thank you so much, and don't be a stranger. Back on here again.
Bridget will be back on. Bridget
Biddy,
is.
I should
say. We won't make a trend of that.
We just call her Biddy.
Yeah.
Bridget is a part of Paranormal Researchers Ireland, so her knowledge down that avenue is really appreciated. Yeah, it's acknowledged by us. Okay. But that's the end of this podcast, and really found that very interesting. Thank you, Bridget. So from myself, Tina,
Jake,
Bridget,
and Chris, and guys, without fail, always remember to stay spooky.
You have been listening to Paranormal Researchers Ireland podcast. Intro and outro music, Nothing to be Scared of by Kakuru. Main theme background music, The White Birch by Moorland Songs. Both intro, outro and main theme music sourced through the Epidemic Sound app. PRI podcast recorded and produced by Jake and edited and mixed by Bill using Adobe Audition. We hope you enjoyed our podcast, so why not join us for our next supernatural podcast coming very soon.